So if you're a chiropractor, and even if you're seeing lower types of volume, if you're collecting 20 to 25,000 per month, or if you're collecting over six figures a month, I'm going to show you some ways to increase your ability to make more money in the same amount of time or even less time without decreasing the quality of your care. And there's some things to consider here. So we're going to go through a few things that are going to help you and your team just be more efficient and deliver a great patient experience at the same time. So these are how to decrease the patient appointment time so you're spending less time with each person but still making it more valuable. Well, the first thing is let's consider how other professionals compare. So we can consider, and I just took, for example, lawyers, and we also took accountants, and then we also looked at medical doctors. So if you look at those three professionals, and then let's compare it to chiropractors. Well, if you took somebody who was, say, working in a firm, for example, they're not getting paid top dollar. So what are the average fees or wages that these professionals would make? Well, the average, and this is for Ontario in Canada, but it's pretty standard across the board. So the average lawyer that's working in a firm would make around $71 per hour. The average accountant that's working in a firm would make around $41 per hour. And this may be an associate. It may not necessarily be a partner in the firm, but somebody who's working, has their degree, has their professional status, their license, and is working in that firm. Here's an MD that's working in a hospital setting, would make around $80 per hour. And chiropractors, let's say an associate, the average is around $53 per hour. Well, I don't know about you, but obviously, if you're somebody who wants to grow, those are not wages to become wealthy doing what you're put here to do on the face of this earth. So if you wanted to build your own business, you wanted to look at it like an entrepreneur, there's ways to increase your ability to earn a living. So you look at higher end professionals in these categories. You look at a higher end lawyer, and typically they're making upwards of $500 per hour. That's maybe a partner in a firm, maybe they own their own firm, or they have a specialty. So people would come to them with that specialty. They're charging a much higher fee. Medical doctor, obviously, if you're a highly skilled surgeon, you may be making upwards of $600,000 to $1 million per year, which obviously your hourly wage for the time that you spend would go way up. And there's also, of course, accountants that do higher end accounting or very specialty accounting work. Maybe it's corporate or forensic accounting, whatever that may be. And again, it's upwards of $500 an hour. So if you're a chiropractor, let's just say hypothetically, you're a chiropractor and you're able to see a patient every 10 minutes. And that would be six patients per hour. And let's just say hypothetically, you're making $80 per patient. Your average income per patient is $80, and you're able to see six people per hour because you see somebody every 10 minutes in your peak times. So six people per hour times $80 per hour is $480. So you're making $480 for those six patients in an hour. But remember, there's staff costs. And of course, that's not all the money that's going to go into your pocket. That money also has to pay for your leasehold, your leasing payments and your staff costs and all your fees and everything else. So let's just say your expense ratio is 50%. You may make $240 per hour if you're seeing that many people per hour. Now, six people per hour is really not a lot of people per hour. So when you think about this, let's say you wanted to make top dollar, you wanted to improve your income. There are ways to do that. Well, how can we see more people in an hour and still provide great care? Well, the question is, first of all, you have to ask yourself, and these are some questions really that I want you to ask yourself to position yourself on what it is you're trying to create. So the question is, first of all, what practice are you trying to build? As a chiropractor, what is your practice really trying to deliver? So, are you a treater of pain? And if you are a treater of pain, you have put yourself into the box of therapeutic type of chiropractic practice. Well, who else is in there? There's also, some chiros are in there because they want to treat pain or treat symptoms or do musculoskeletal type of things. There's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want. But if that's what you're doing and you've put yourself into that category, but you want something different, there's obviously things that have to happen to build something different. So chiros are in there. There's going to be some physios in that box as well. They're treaters of pain. Many medical doctors are treaters of symptoms. And then there's other people like naturopaths and massage therapists. We'll call them RMTs, registered massage therapists. So there's a lot of people in that box that are treaters of pain. So, from the general public's point of view, why would they come to you if they see you as a treater of pain when all of these other people are in that same category? So, to build your practice, to position yourself as being something different, we have to do certain things to position ourselves as being different. So, what is the, how do we do that? Well, let's talk a little bit about that. So, the second thing we have to ask ourselves is, what is the ultimate outcome of what you're trying to do with a patient? So, if that patient comes in and you do an examination and your examination is highly contained or contains a lot of uh, pain based tests. So, in other words, if you're doing a lot of pain based consulting and questioning, asking them about their pain and the character of their pain and how long's the pain been there, what's the location of their pain, and does it radiate, and all these pain based questions, again, you're positioning yourself as a treater of pain. Now, some of these things are important to know, but my suggestion is to get into a place where you're starting to ask questions of the type, obviously the type of pain, but how is it affecting their life? So type of pain, but how is it affecting them? How is it affecting, affecting their life? And these are what we call hot button questions. And this is where it gets really important because now you start to relate to that person about what their goals are, what their hopes are, and get them to a place where they're not focused so much on the symptom, but they're focused on how that symptom is affecting them and stopping them from doing the things they love or creating a problem in their life that's stopping them from achieving their goal. Okay. So that's really, again, very, very important. So the question is, what practice are you trying to build, and what is the ultimate outcome of your plan? Now, on the next step, if you say, well, I want to build something better or something different, something that is going to give me the opportunity to see more people, I need to create a plan of management that has an ultimate outcome. So, in other words, what does your care plan try to accomplish? Care plan accomplish. So, in other words, we need to have some objective findings in that care plan that's going to allow us to determine some sort of measurement, some sort of metric that we can show the person this is how they're improving aside from their symptoms. If we just use their symptoms to measure how they're coming along, then what happens is when people get out of pain, and if the symptomatic change is the only goal, the only thing that you're measuring, typically they have no reason to stick around. So they quit. So to keep people around, to give them the full benefit of chiropractic care, the benefit of getting their spine adjusted long after the symptoms are gone. In fact, I mean, I think we all understand that the benefit of adjusting the spine and removing interference from the nervous system far exceeds just removing symptoms. So to help people understand that, we need to have a care plan that allows them to get to a point or has the goal on getting to a point, reaching a point that exceeds the symptomatic change. So it may be an X-ray measurement. Maybe we're measuring the X-ray lateral cervical curve. And if we can measure a lateral cervical curve and educate that person to say that it's important to have a proper lateral cervical curve because that removes interference from the nervous system, allows the brain to function and communicate with the body at a higher level, then they understand that. And then typically people will stick around a lot longer than the symptoms are there or gone, and they will work on getting that lateral cervical curve improved. Maybe it's some sort of a neurological scan or a nerve scan, neuroscan, and maybe you're measuring autonomic nervous system function, or maybe you're measuring HRV, and you give them a metric to say, we want to get to this level. So they focus on those numbers and those measurements as opposed to the symptomatic presentation. So we have to have a care plan that really establishes a reason to stay under care to achieve some sort of a metric. Okay. So these are the first things that we have to consider when we want to see more people in a shorter amount of time. So they have a reason to stay far beyond the symptoms. Um, so the next thing, has there been an education process in place? So, what type of education process do we have in our office? Now, in other words, when we go through our day one, our exam, we do our first adjustment, we get that person on a care plan. Do we have some sort of an explanation and a way to communicate the benefit of removing interference from the nerves, getting on some sort of a plan, helping them understand what we're measuring, what that metric is, what the outcome is, so they have an idea of why they need to stay under this care, why they need to stay under chiropractic care beyond the symptoms. So maybe it's a one-on-one report of findings. Okay, that's very possible. And that's an average way of getting people to understand what you're doing. So if you're doing just a one-on-one report of findings, typically you're going to have medium style results depending on what level of communication skill that you have. Now, there's ways obviously to improve your communication skill so that you can get better results by doing a one-on-one report of findings. Maybe a next step up is you want to include a video. So you could record a video report or video doctor's report so that the patient can watch this video. And it can be just a short video, but at least it'll give them some pre-framing information about the importance of chiropractic care, the importance of making the objective changes, and getting under some level of regular care after that before you show them their exam findings, before you show them their x-rays or their nerve scans or their posture results, whatever that might be, so that they have a background information. So that's the next step. Or you can do a live group report. And a live group report, I find if you want to build a big practice of warrior patients who really understand what your vision is, this is the best way to do that. And it really doesn't take a lot of time. Even a 30-minute to 40-minute report where you can share your vision, share the philosophy of chiropractic, share the reasons why you do what you do, and show them some examples of the damage of maybe it's x-rays, the damage of nerve scans. Here's what a normal looks like. Here's what a severe one looks like before they see their own results is really, really valuable. It's very valuable for the patient to see that because not many doctors do that. Medical doctors or physios or other chiropractors, they don't do that. So the patient sees value just in getting that from you. But not to mention the education that they get helps them to understand even more on a deeper level the value of staying under regular chiropractic care. So a live group or live doctor's report is very, very valuable. Now, the next thing is, has there been a patient onboarding? So in other words, we used to do this on day 4. So we call it a day 4, and you can do it on whatever day you want. But after the person commits to their plan, does the team go over the regular routine of what happens on their daily visit? And what happens during this time is they would talk to them about how to come into the office, how to check in, the number system that we had, how to swipe in with their key fob or whatever system that you use, how to go and do their pre-adjustment warm-up. So we did some wobble chairs or wall tractioning, whether you do that or not, and also then how to go to the table, when to go to the table, and the fact that the doctor would like you lying down in the position of your first adjustment. Now, here, if you want to establish quicker appointment times, this is hugely valuable. If the person understands this is what the process is, so that way you can pre-frame what happens during that time, and you're not going to get a lot of people then sitting up on the table. So we used to have actually, and we would train them how to change the face paper. They would be lying down, and we actually had a rule in our office that if the patient was not lying down, ready to be adjusted, then the doctor typically would say, "Hey, just go ahead and lie down, and I will be back in a few minutes," and then go see the next person, and then come back to that person. So we actually train them to say, "We need you lying down." And that did a couple things. It would help them relax. Their heart rate would slow down. We found the adjustment would go a lot easier. It would hold better afterwards. And we would avoid getting into all kinds of conversations. And that's what slowed us down. And I'm going to say probably if you're seeing less than 20 patients per hour, so if you're not able to see a patient every 3 minutes, you're probably getting into all kinds of conversations that you could potentially avoid and still deliver great care, very focused, very present time care during those 3 minutes with each patient if you wanted to see 20 patients or more an hour. Okay, if you're seeing less than that, you're probably engaging in a lot of extra conversations. So this is what happens on day 4. That's a very, very important day. So we've pre-framed in the patient what happens during the regular office visit. Now, here's a really interesting thing, and this is something that you can easily measure, and maybe you want to get a team member to actually measure this, is you divide your visit times into part A, part B, and part C. So this is visit time analysis. Visit time. So we want part A. So what is part A? Well, part A is the time that you walk into the room and that conversation that happens before you actually lay your hand on that patient to perform the adjustment. So it may include, hi, Bob, how are you? How's everything going? Bob responds, you engage in conversation. Hopefully that conversation stays chiropractic. If you're finding that you're having conversation that is outside of chiropractic, that's about the game last night or about the weather or anything that's not related to their health and well-being and function and improvement, then I would say try to reanalyze what you're talking about in your office. If that's what you want to deliver, that's perfectly fine. But if you want to grow, these are things that have to be eliminated. So part A is that time that you're doing all that conversation with them. If you're applying any type of pre-adjustment modality, so let's just say use an electric massager or some sort of a vibra cusser, or if you're doing a lot of soft tissue therapy, then that again falls into part A. So you have to ask yourself, is that something that you really want to deliver? Especially if it's not something that's being monetized. So if you're doing a lot of soft tissue work on people and you're including that in the adjustment fee, then that's probably counterintuitive to what you want to grow if the goal is to grow. You could, if that's something that's very important to you to deliver, you could hire a therapist to do that, or even a staff member, if it's not a controlled act, to do that if they're so inclined to be able to perform that type of soft tissue or putting on that modality before you come in and do the adjustment. That's a potential as well. So part A is that part before you actually lay your hands on that person. So part B is the time that you first lay hands on. So this is the adjustment time. You lay your hands on that person, and it happens from the time you put your hands on to the time you're finished your last adjustment. That's part B of the adjustment. That's the important time. And typically during that time, I used to really try to be very focused and not be talking. I'd be focusing on the areas I was adjusting. I'd be focusing on my palpation, and I would purposely tell the patient. Again, we talked to them on our onboarding meeting on day 4. Is that the doctor will probably not talk during the time that he or she is trying to adjust you, because they're focused on what they're feeling, they're focused on what they're doing, especially if they've got your spine or for example, your cervical spine in their hands. They want to be completely present on exactly what they're doing. And the patient understood that. And then part C of the adjustment is the time that you make your very last adjustment. You take your hands off that person to the time you exit the room. So here's the thing. So this is the A is the entrance, B is the adjustment, and C is the exit. A and C are really moot points here. We want to try to minimize and eliminate those as much as possible. Okay, so we want to be focused so much on this part B of the adjustment time. And if for most people, they can say, gosh, I could adjust somebody, within a minute, minute and a half. It doesn't take long to make a few adjustments on somebody. We probably adjust our classmates or other chiropractors or maybe our family members in 30 seconds, a minute. It doesn't take long. So if we can stay focused to do that with patients, imagine how many people you could see in an hour. So this is something that we really want to try to minimize. We want to minimize the entrance and the exit times by really being focused and intentional on our conversation. So that would be a study that you can do in your office. And we used to actually get staff members to time us during adjustment times, just randomly, so we wouldn't be paying attention to it. And they would actually time part A, they would time part B, and they would time part C. And we'd look at, okay, if our adjustment time is 4 minutes, but I spent a minute and a half on part A and a minute and a half on part C, whereas I was only 1 minute actually adjusting the person, wow, we could really cut that down to be much more efficient. Okay. So, next thing, the question is, are you performing non-chiropractic tasks? Now, I touched on this earlier that you're not getting paid for. So maybe you're performing some modalities, you're doing a lot of soft tissue, you're doing some counseling with that person during that time. There's a lot of things that we waste our time on that we don't monetize or we don't get paid for. If you're the licensed chiropractor, you have a license to adjust people. There's all kinds of things that you can do to increase your income in your office that are non-licensed acts. Maybe it's performing some sort of modality where a staff member could do that, like apply some sort of a soft wave laser, whatever that might be. That's not a controlled act. So you can get a staff member doing that and actually put a price on it, put a monetization on it. And that would again free up your time to be focused just on adjusting people. Maybe it's doing a consult for a re-exam or a consult for an examination. You could train a tech CA to do that, whereas you're not having to do that. So these are all things to be able to free up your time so you can focus your time on the types of activities that are going to bring in the most income. And I'm going to say probably adjusting is the best way to do that. Okay? And so focus your time on chiropractic chiropractic uh, strategies that pay you. Okay. There's a saying that I remember hearing is that you can't build $1 million practice by doing $10 an hour tasks. So start to identify all of the things that you could allow a CA to do, or perhaps hire an associate, or perhaps hire another therapist to do that's going to free up your time to be able to see more people per hour in the time that you're in the office. And the last one I have for you here is, are the visits pre-booked and prepaid? So pre-booked and prepaid. That is hugely important. So, really, really something to consider is that if you're still doing a pay-as-you-go type of model, it's highly inefficient. The patient takes a lot longer at the desk. If they're not pre-booked, again, they're booking their appointment the next time, then it takes time from your staff. If they're sitting there and they have to stop every time they're there to get out their debit card or their credit card or cash to pay you every time, that again is inefficient. It takes time away from your staff. Plus, in the patient's mind, if they're not prepaid for their adjustment, the commitment level goes down. So if they're scheduled for 3 times a week, but they haven't got that 50, 60, 70, $80, whatever your regular adjustment fee is, to come in that day, it's easy to talk themselves out of coming. It happens all the time. So my suggestion is get a care plan in place or a block book of visits that you're selling to the person that you're scheduling them for. So they're pre-scheduled. And my suggestion is develop a care plan that at least gets them to their next re-examination. So the care plan has a objective means of getting them from point A where they're at to point B where you would actually do another measurement from the beginning, whether it's a measure on an X-ray, whether it's some sort of a nerve scan, whatever that is, and you have that care plan in place. It's pre-booked, it's prepaid, it's just a done deal. It's a package deal. And that again is going to free up your time to allow you to get more people in during your times to increase your value. There's no reason, and here's the thing, and I want to just sum up by saying this, is that there's no reason that chiropractors should be substandard or accept a substandard rate of pay. You've spent the time in school, you've done everything you need to do to improve your skills, pass your boards, you've probably gone to seminars, you've learned different techniques, you've learned different strategies. You deserve to be paid well, but you also want to deliver great care. So there are certain things that you should do in your office to allow that to happen. So hopefully this is helpful for you. If you want more help with this, if you'd like to set up a call with me, I'd be happy to talk to you about where the biggest challenges are in your office, why you're not growing, and even potentially over the phone, just give you some strategies that you could just start right away with to put them in to see better success. I'm Dr. Colin. I will look forward to seeing you on the next video. And if you like these videos, please go ahead and like and subscribe, and that way we'll be able to get our message to more people. See you on the next video.